This video is about solving a rational equation. If we are given 3 over x squared minus 2x plus 4 over x minus 2 is equal to 1/3, and we have to solve for x here, the first thing that you should do is find the values for x, which would cause division by 0, the values for x, which we have to restrict from the domain, or like I call them in class, the bad values. So in order to find that, you should factor anything in the any denominator that you can. So this can be factored a little bit. You can pull out an x, and you're left with x minus 2. So that makes it, I'm going to replace this denominator with this factored form. So now it makes it a little easier to see what values need to be restricted. If I plug in x equals to 0 right here, 0 times anything is 0. This would read 3 divided by 0, and we're never allowed to divide by 0. So we find that x is not allowed to equal to 0. Also, if I look at this expression, if I put 2 in for x, 2 minus 2 would give me 0. 0 times anything is 0. This would be 3 divided by 0. Also, 2 has to be restricted from our domain. When we look at this denominator, 2 minus 2 would give us 0. So we've already have 2 on our list. So these are the two values. 1 over 3 is never going to be a problem as far as division by 0 goes, because 3 equals to 3 and nothing else. So 3 is not 0, so no problem right there. All right, so we called out the bad values. Now we go ahead and we find our lowest common denominator. So step 1 was to find the, this is what I term the bad numbers. Specifically, this means any values for x which would cause division by 0. Any values for x that have to be excluded from our domain. Okay, the second step is to find the lowest common denominator. And so I'm going to work on that. The lowest common denominator has to be something that each individual denominator can divide into. I'm just going to start by writing one of them down. I'm going to write down x times x minus 2, and I ask myself, can x times x minus 2 be divided into x times x minus 2? And of course it can. It would divide in one time. Separately, I ask myself, can x minus 2 divide into x times x minus 2? And yes, it can. Then I say, well, can 3 divide into x times x minus 2? And no, it can't. So I need to build up my lowest common denominator by also multiplying this by 3. So if I want to rearrange this, I'm free to. I'm going to say this is 3x times x minus 2. And now if I went through the check, can this denominator divide into this? Can this denominator divide into this? And can this denominator divide into this? I would get yeses to that and to those questions, and so I'm ready to go. This is my lowest common denominator. Now I proceed by multiplying both sides of the equation by the LCD. So that's step 3. Multiply both sides of the equation by the lowest common denominator. So let's do that. 3x times x minus 2. 3x times x minus 2. It's going to distribute to each term, so I'm going to write it out again so I can watch the canceling. When 3x times x minus 2 gets distributed to the second term, it looks like that. Okay, now let's go through and cancel what we can. 3x times x minus 2 over 1 times 3 over x times x minus 2. X times x minus 2 will cancel. They will divide into each other, leaving us with 1's there. So what we're left in the numerator with is 3 times 1 times 3, or just 9. In the denominator, 1 times 1, so 9 over 1 is just a 9. That's what we're left with. Plus, here's my plus sign. Now I look at 3x times x minus 2 times 4 over x minus 2. X minus 2's will cancel. I'm left with 12 times x. Over here, 1 over 3 times x minus 2. The 3's will cancel. I'm left with x times x minus 2. Now I need to solve this equation. So I'm going to distribute the x. So 4 is to solve for x. So this is what I'm doing. I have 9 plus 12x is equal to x squared minus 2x. I see that this is not a linear equation, this is a quadratic equation. So the way I can solve quadratic equations is by factoring, if it's factorable, by taking the square root or completing the square, or by using the quadratic formula. So in these steps, I need a 0 on one side of the equation. I'm going to get a 0 on the left-hand side, simply because it's easier to work with a positive leading coefficient. So I'm going to move the 9 and the 12x by subtracting 9, subtracting 12x. That gives me x squared minus 14x minus 9. And I'm thinking of the factors of 9, 9 and 1, 3 and 3. And I don't think that this is factorable. I'm going to rewrite it with the 0 on the right-hand side because I like it better that way. So what I'm going to do is solve by using the quadratic formula, which says x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2 times a. We will make sure we know what a, b, and c are. A is the leading coefficient. A is 1. B is negative 14. C is negative 9. So x is equal to negative b, negative 14, which is positive 14, plus or minus the square root of 14 squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a, which is 1. All right, x is equal to 14 plus or minus the square root. 14 times 14, I don't have my calculator handy, so 4 times 4 is 16, 4, 5, 4, 1, 6, 196. And this is 4 times 1 times negative 9 is plus a 36 all over 2. So 196 plus 36, 12, 9, 10, 13, is 232. Okay, I am going to have to get my calculator out so I can see if I can reduce that.